The dust swirled across the parched street of Tascosa, Texas, as Bethany Gardner stepped off the stagecoach, her dark brown skin gleaming under the merciless sun of 1875. She clutched a small valise containing everything she owned in the world: a few dresses, her mother's silver hairbrush, and a letter promising employment as a cook at the town's only hotel. What the letter hadn't promised was acceptance in a town that had never seen a woman quite like her. "You sure you got the right town, miss?" The stagecoach driver's voice held no malice, just genuine confusion as he handed down her trunk. "Tascosa ain't exactly known for being welcoming to folks of your coloring." Bethany straightened her spine the way her mother had taught her. "Yes, sir. I'm certain." She smoothed down her navy blue traveling dress, carefully mended in 3 places but clean and proper. "I have employment waiting." The driver shrugged, tipped his hat, and climbed back onto his perch. With a crack of his whip and a cloud of dust, the stagecoach rattled away, leaving Bethany alone on the main street of a town that already seemed to be staring at her with suspicious eyes. Taking a deep breath, she began walking toward the hotel at the far end of the street, ignoring the whispers that followed her. 22 years of living as a free woman of color had taught her that showing fear only invited more trouble. Her mixed heritage, a black mother and Mexican father, had left her with skin the color of burnished copper and features that belonged wholly to neither world, making her an outsider everywhere she went. The Tascosa Grand Hotel was hardly grand, a 2-story wooden structure with peeling white paint and a crooked sign, but it was the finest establishment in this cattle town perched on the edge of civilization. Bethany climbed the 3 steps to the porch and pushed open the door, steeling herself for whatever awaited inside. A bell tinkled above her head as she entered. The lobby was empty except for a balding man behind the front desk who looked up at the sound, his expression shifting from professional welcome to shock in an instant. "May I help you?" His voice had a sharp edge, like a knife hidden beneath a napkin. "Yes, sir. My name is Bethany Gardner. I received correspondence about a position as a cook. Mr. Ellis hired me." She reached into her pocket and produced the letter. The man didn't even glance at it. "There must be some mistake. We aren't hiring colored help." "But I have a letter, sir, from Mr. Ellis himself." "Mr. Ellis passed on 3 weeks ago. I'm Mr. Simmons, the new owner." His lips curled into something between a smile and a grimace. "And I don't need your kind working here." Bethany felt as if she'd been struck. She had spent nearly every penny she had on the stagecoach fare from Kansas City. "Sir, I traveled all this way, not my concern." He turned away, pretending to busy himself with papers. "You best find the colored section of town. Maybe someone there will take you in." Fighting back tears, Bethany turned and walked out. She stood on the hotel porch, the Texas sun beating down on her as reality settled in. She was hundreds of miles from anyone she knew, with little money and nowhere to go in a town that clearly didn't want her. A commotion drew her attention to the street. A group of cowboys had ridden in, their horses kicking up clouds of dust. They were laughing and calling to one another as they dismounted in front of the saloon across the way. One man stood out from the rest, taller, his movements more deliberate. Even from this distance, she could see he commanded respect from the others. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up, and for a brief moment their eyes met across the dusty street. Bethany quickly looked away, gathering her courage to figure out her next move. "You look like you could use some help, miss." The voice came from beside her. An older Mexican woman stood there, her face lined with wrinkles but her eyes kind. "Is it that obvious?" Bethany asked with a weak smile. "In this town? A beautiful young woman with skin like yours standing alone with her luggage. Yes, it is obvious." The woman introduced herself as Alina Vasquez. I run a small boarding house on the edge of town. Not fancy, but clean. If you need a place to stay until you figure things out, you are welcome. Bethany felt a rush of gratitude. Thank you, I came for a job that no longer exists. Ah, let me guess. The hotel. Ellis died and that snake Simmons took over. Alina sighed. Come, we will figure something out. You can help me cook tonight. I have 3 cowboys staying with me, and they eat like horses. As they walked away from the hotel, Bethany could feel eyes following her. She glanced over her shoulder once and saw the tall cowboy still watching her, his expression unreadable beneath the shadow of his hat. Alina's boarding house was indeed small, just a 4-room adobe structure with a central kitchen and dining area. It was spotlessly clean, with colorful woven blankets brightening the simple furnishings. You can have the back room, Alina said, showing her to a small but tidy space with a narrow bed and a washstand. It's not much, but it's perfect, Bethany interrupted, grateful for any sanctuary. How much do you charge? We can work that out. You said you cook. I could use help. My arthritis makes kneading dough difficult these days. For the first time since arriving in Tascosa, Bethany felt a flicker of hope. I'm an excellent cook. My mother taught me, and I worked in a fine home in Kansas City for 5 years. Good. Then you start tonight, Alina smiled. Rest now. We will prepare dinner later. Alone in the small room, Bethany unpacked her few belongings. As she placed her mother's hairbrush on the washstand, she caught her reflection in the small mirror and paused. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. They'll judge you by your skin before they know your heart. But you stand tall anyway, because your worth isn't measured by their small minds. That evening, Bethany helped Alina prepare a hearty stew with fresh baked bread. The scent filled the small house, and by sunset, the sound of boots on the porch announced the return of Alina's boarders. The door swung open, and Bethany froze as 3 men entered. The first 2 were ordinary cowhands, dusty and tired from a day's work. But the third was the tall cowboy she'd seen in town, the one who had held her gaze. Up close, she could see he was perhaps 30, with sun-weathered skin, sharp blue eyes, and a strong jawline softened by a day's growth of beard. Alina, that smell could bring a dead man back to life, one of the cowboys called out cheerfully. Then he spotted Bethany and his smile faltered. Alina emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. Thomas, Samuel, Tyler, this is Bethany Gardner. She will be helping me and staying here for a while. The first 2 men nodded awkwardly, but the tall one, Tyler, stepped forward, removing his hat. Miss Gardner, he said, his voice deep and even. Tyler Kincaid, welcome to Tascosa. He extended his hand without hesitation. Surprised, Bethany took it briefly. Thank you, Mr. Kincaid. Tyler, he corrected with a slight smile. Alina clapped her hands. Wash up, all of you, dinner is ready. The meal was awkward at first. Samuel and Thomas ate quickly, keeping their eyes on their plates. But Tyler engaged in conversation, asking Alina about her day and responding to Bethany's few quiet comments with genuine interest. This bread is exceptional, he said, taking another piece. Different from Alina's usual. Bethany made it, Alina said proudly. She has magic hands in the kitchen. Tyler looked at Bethany with new appreciation. Is that why you came to Tascosa, to cook at the hotel? Yes, she answered, not elaborating on the rejection she'd faced. Simmons is a fool then, Tyler said simply, as if reading her mind. His loss. After dinner, the men moved to the porch to smoke. Bethany helped Alina clear the table, feeling lighter than she had all day. That Tyler, Alina said, glancing toward the door. He is different from most men around here. His father raised him right before the war took him. He seems kind, Bethany ventured cautiously. He is. and he runs the most successful ranch in the county now. Started with nothing after the war, built it all himself. Alina handed her a plate to dry. He is respected even by those who disagree with some of his ideas about people. His ideas. Tyler fought for the Union, not the Confederacy. Came back with some notions about equality that don't sit well with everyone here. Alina lowered her voice. He has Mexican vaqueros working his ranch, pays them the same as white cowboys, even hired a freed slave as his foreman. People talk, but they can't argue with his success. Later, as Bethany prepared for bed, she heard soft voices on the porch. Curiosity drew her to the window, where she could see Tyler speaking with Alina in the moonlight. "She needs work, Alina," he was saying. "And I need someone who can cook for my men. The ranch house is big enough. People will talk," Alina warned. Tyler's laugh was soft. "People always talk. I stopped caring long ago. She is a good woman, educated too, I think, but life has not been easy for her. I can see that." There was something in his voice that made Bethany's heart beat faster. "Will you ask her for me? Why not ask her yourself? Because a job offer from a man she just met might seem improper. Coming from you, it's a recommendation." Alina chuckled. "Always thinking, that brain of yours." "Yes, I will ask her. Now go to bed, Tyler Kincaid. Morning comes early." Bethany moved away from the window, her mind racing with possibilities. A job at her ranch. It wasn't what she had planned, but plans had already gone awry. And there was something about Tyler Kincaid that made her believe she might find respect under his roof, if not acceptance. The next morning, Alina presented the offer as they prepared breakfast. "Tyler needs a cook at his ranch. The last one left to get married 2 months ago, and his cowboys are terrible in the kitchen. It would be a good position, your own cabin behind the main house, decent pay." "Why would he offer this to me? He doesn't know me." "He knows good cooking when he tastes it," Alina said practically. "And he is a good judge of character. He said to tell you that if you're interested, he'll take you out to see the ranch today. No obligation." Bethany considered her limited options. Stay in town and face daily prejudice while searching for work that might not exist. Try to scrape together enough money to leave. Or take a chance on this offer from a man who had shown her more respect in one evening than most had in years. "I'll go look," she decided. "Just to see." After breakfast, Tyler saddled 2 horses. "Have you ridden before, Miss Gardner?" "Yes, though it's been some time," she admitted. He helped her mount a gentle mare, his hands strong but respectful as he adjusted her stirrups. Then he swung up onto his own horse with easy grace. "It's about 5 miles to the ranch," he explained as they rode out of town. "Not too far, but enough to feel away from things." They rode side by side, the morning sun warming the air. Tyler pointed out landmarks as they went, telling her about the land, the cattle, the weather patterns. He spoke to her as an equal, something Bethany found both refreshing and slightly unsettling in its unfamiliarity. "May I ask you something, Mr. Kincaid?" "Tyler," he reminded her. "And yes, you may ask me anything. Why offer me this position? Surely there are other cooks in the area." He considered her question seriously. "Partly because of your bread," he said with a slight smile. "Partly because Alina trusts you and I trust her judgment, and partly because—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Because I believe everyone deserves a fair chance, regardless of where they come from or what they look like." The simplicity and sincerity of his answer touched her. "Here we are," he said as they crested a small rise. Below them stretched the Kincaid Ranch. A large 2-story house stood in a grove of cottonwood trees. Behind it were a bunkhouse, barns, corrals, and other outbuildings. Cattle dotted the surrounding pastures, and in the distance, cowboys moved among the herd. "It's beautiful," Bethany said honestly. "Thank you." I've worked hard to build it." There was pride in his voice, but not arrogance. "Come, I'll show you around." The main house was impressive, solidly built with a wide porch wrapping around it. Inside, the furnishings were good quality but simple, designed for comfort rather than show. The kitchen was large and well equipped by frontier standards, with a cast iron stove, a pump at the sink, and ample storage. "You'd be cooking for me and usually 6 to 8 ranch hands," Tyler explained. "Sometimes more during roundup or when we have visitors. 3 meals a day, with Sundays lighter so you have some time to yourself." Behind the main house stood a small cabin. "This would be yours," Tyler said, opening the door. It was a simple one-room structure with a bed, table, chairs, and a small stove for heat. "It's not fancy, but it's private." "It's lovely," Bethany said, meaning it. The space was clean and bright, with windows that caught the morning sun. "The pay is $30 a month plus room and board," Tyler continued. "Is that acceptable?" It was more than fair, better than what the hotel had offered. "Yes, it is." "Good." He smiled, and Bethany noticed how it transformed his face, softening the hard edges carved by sun and responsibility. "When can you start?" "I would need to thank Alina properly and gather my things." "Of course. I'll ride back with you now, and we can return tomorrow if that suits you." As they prepared to leave, a man approached on horseback. He was black, perhaps in his 40s, with strong features and an air of authority. "Ah, Daniel," Tyler called. "Come meet Miss Gardner. She's considering becoming our new cook." The man dismounted and approached. "Daniel Washington, miss. I'm the foreman here." He offered his hand without hesitation. Bethany shook it, noting the surprise in his eyes as he recognized her heritage. "Pleasure to meet you, Mr. Washington." "Daniel will tell you I'm a fair employer, but a demanding one," Tyler said, "especially when it comes to meals." Daniel laughed. "The man likes his biscuits light and his coffee strong, Miss Gardner. Satisfy those requirements and you'll have no complaints." Their easy camaraderie told Bethany more about Tyler Kincaid than any words could have. A white rancher treating a black foreman as an equal in Texas, just a decade after the Civil War. It was almost unheard of. On the ride back to town, Bethany found herself asking questions about the ranch, the work, the people. Tyler answered everything patiently, occasionally asking about her own background and experience. "What brought you west from Kansas City?" he asked as they neared town. "A desire for change, for something of my own." She hesitated, then added, "And there were difficulties." A man who wouldn't take no for an answer. Tyler's expression darkened. "I see. You'll have no such troubles at the ranch. My men know how to behave or they don't work for me." "Thank you. That means a great deal." As they rode into Tascosa, Bethany became acutely aware of the stares they attracted a white rancher and a woman of color, riding side by side as equals. Outside the general store, a group of men stopped talking to watch them pass. "Kincaid," one called out. "That new help you're bringing in. Didn't know you were taking in strays now." Tyler reined his horse to a stop, his face hardening. "That's enough, Parker." The man Parker stepped forward, a sneer on his face. "Just making conversation. Seems like you might want to consider the reputation of your ranch, mixing things up like you do." "My ranch's reputation is for quality cattle and fair dealing," Tyler said evenly. "And Miss Gardner is my new cook, which makes her business my business and no one else's. Are we clear?" Parker glanced at his friends, then back at Tyler. Something in the rancher's steady gaze made him back down. "Clear enough," he muttered, stepping back. Tyler nodded curtly and urged his horse forward. Bethany followed, her heart racing not from fear but from the unexpected defense. No one had ever stood up for her like that. At Alina's boarding house, Tyler helped her down from her horse. "I apologize for that unpleasantness," he said quietly. "There's no need. I'm used to much worse." His blue eyes held hers. "That doesn't make it right. And you shouldn't have to be used to any of it." The conviction in his voice warmed something inside her. "Thank you for showing me the ranch. I'll be ready tomorrow." He nodded, a smile returning to his face. "Until tomorrow, then." That evening, as Bethany packed her few belongings, Alina sat on the edge of the bed watching her. "Tyler Kincaid is a good man," she said, "but taking this position will put you in a difficult spot. Not everyone shares his views." "I've been in difficult spots before," Bethany replied, folding a dress. "At least this one comes with respect and fair pay." Alina nodded. "Just be careful, this is not just about work." "What do you mean?" "I saw how he looked at you, and how you looked at him." Bethany felt heat rise in her cheeks. "That's absurd. We just met." "Sometimes that is all it takes." Alina patted her hand. "Just be careful with your heart, Nina. The world is cruel to those who love across such lines." Bethany shook her head. "There's nothing like that. He's simply being kind." But that night, as she lay in bed, she couldn't help remembering the intensity in Tyler's blue eyes when he defended her, or the gentle strength in his hands as he helped her onto her horse. No man had ever made her feel both so safe and so seen. The next morning, Tyler arrived early with a wagon for her trunk. They said goodbye to Alina, who hugged Bethany tightly and whispered, "My door is always open if you need it." The ride to the ranch was pleasant, with Tyler pointing out features of his property as they approached. "We're running about 2,000 head of cattle now," he explained. "Still building the herd after some losses in last year's drought." At the ranch, he carried her trunk to the cabin himself. "Get settled in. Come to the main house when you're ready, and I'll introduce you to everyone properly." Left alone, Bethany unpacked quickly, arranging her few possessions to make the cabin feel like home. She changed into a clean work dress, a simple brown cotton with white trim, and tied a fresh apron around her waist. At the main house, she found Tyler waiting on the porch with 7 cowboys lined up beside him, all freshly washed and looking slightly uncomfortable in their Sunday best behavior. "Men, this is Miss Bethany Gardner, our new cook," Tyler announced. "She deserves your respect, your courtesy, and your appreciation for the meals she'll be preparing. Anyone who can't manage that can find work elsewhere." He looked at each man in turn. "Is that understood?" There was a chorus of "Yes, boss," and "Yes, sir." Tyler then introduced each man by name. Besides Daniel, there was Hank, the oldest at nearly 50. Jim and Pete, brothers who had worked for Tyler since he started the ranch. Miguel and Carlos, cousins from Mexico. And young Billy, barely 20 and clearly the most junior hand. "Miss Gardner will start with dinner tonight," Tyler concluded. "Until then, give her space to get acquainted with the kitchen." The men dispersed to their duties, and Tyler showed Bethany through the kitchen, explaining where supplies were kept and how the previous cook had organized things. "I took the liberty of having some supplies brought in," he said, opening the pantry to reveal well-stocked shelves. "If there's anything specific you need, just let me know." "This is more than generous," Bethany said, already planning meals in her mind. "I believe in providing the right tools for the job." Tyler paused at the door. "I have work to see to, but I'll be back for dinner. If you need anything, just ask anyone, and Bethany." He hesitated, something almost vulnerable crossing his face. "I'm glad you're here." Throughout the day, Bethany familiarized herself with the kitchen and prepared a hearty dinner of beef stew, cornbread, and apple pie. The men arrived at the appointed hour, washing up at the pump outside before filing in to take their places at the long table in the dining room adjacent to the kitchen. Tyler sat at the head, with Daniel at his right hand, a statement Bethany didn't miss. The other men arranged themselves by some unspoken hierarchy, with young Billy at the far end. When Bethany brought out the food, there was an appreciative murmur from the men. Tyler waited until she had served everyone and taken her own seat at his left, the place he had pointedly kept open before picking up his fork. "Miss Gardner," he said, "would you do us the honor of saying grace?" She was startled but composed herself quickly. "Of course." She bowed her head. "For this food and those who share it, for work that sustains us and rest that renews us, we give thanks. Amen." "Amen," the men echoed, and then fell to their meal with enthusiasm. The conversation was easy, focusing on the day's work and plans for the following day. Tyler made sure to include Bethany explaining ranch operations she might not understand and introducing topics she could participate in. After dinner, as the men thanked her and filed out, Tyler lingered. "That was exceptional," he said. "The best meal this house has seen in a long time." "Thank you." She began gathering plates. "I'm glad it met with approval. More than approval." He picked up some dishes to help her. "The way to a cowboy's loyalty is often through his stomach, and I believe you've secured it in one meal." They worked together, clearing the table. In the kitchen, Tyler rolled up his sleeves to help wash dishes, ignoring Bethany's protests. "My mother taught me that no work is beneath any man," he said, plunging his hands into the wash basin. "She ran our farm alone after my father died at Shiloh. I learned to cook, clean, mend whatever needed doing. She sounds like a remarkable woman." She was. A shadow passed over his face. "We lost her to fever 2 winters ago." "I'm sorry." Bethany handed him a towel. "I lost my mother last year. It leaves a hole nothing quite fills." Their eyes met in shared understanding, and something passed between them, a recognition of kindred spirits beneath their obvious differences. The next few weeks fell into a comfortable rhythm. Bethany rose before dawn to prepare breakfast for the men before they headed out to work. Midday, she rang the bell to call in whoever was close enough to hear it for a simple lunch. Evenings were for more substantial meals, with all hands gathering around the table. She discovered that beyond cooking, the men expected her to mend clothes, tend minor injuries, and generally serve as the maternal figure in their rough, male world. She took on these tasks willingly, finding satisfaction in creating a sense of home for these hardworking men. Tyler often found excuses to visit the kitchen between meals, checking supplies, discussing menu plans, or simply stopping by for coffee. Their conversations grew longer and more personal as days passed. He told her about his time in the war, his dreams for the ranch, his beliefs about the changing West. She shared stories of her childhood in Missouri, her years working in Kansas City, her love of books and music. The men accepted her presence with increasing ease. Daniel, in particular, became a friend, sometimes joining her on the porch of her cabin in the evenings to talk about books they had both read or share stories of life before the war. One evening, about a month after her arrival, Bethany sat on her porch watching the sunset when Tyler approached, carrying something wrapped in cloth. "May I join you?" he asked. She nodded, moving over on the small bench. He sat beside her and unwrapped the package to reveal a book. "I remembered you mentioning you enjoyed poetry. I found this in town today and thought you might like it." It was a volume of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass, not a new copy, but well preserved. Bethany opened it carefully, touched beyond words by the thoughtfulness of the gift. "Thank you," she said softly. "This is very kind." "It's selfish, really," he said with a slight smile. "I thought you might read some aloud sometime. I've always found your voice soothing." The compliment warmed her. "I'd be happy to." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching as the sky turned from gold to deep purple. "Bethany," Tyler said finally, his voice low, "I need to ask you something." "Yes, Are you happy here? The question surprised her. Yes, very much so. Everyone has been kind, the work is satisfying, and I feel. She searched for the word. Respected. I'm glad. He seemed to be gathering his thoughts. I've noticed some of the men from town giving you trouble when you go in for supplies. Bethany tensed slightly. She had indeed faced hostile stares and muttered comments on her trips to town, but had said nothing, not wanting to seem ungrateful. It's nothing I'm not used to handling. That doesn't make it right. Tyler's jaw tightened. I've spoken to some of them, but you shouldn't have to fight my battles, she interrupted gently. That's not what I'm doing. He turned to face her. But I want you to know that you have support, that you're not alone here. There was something in his voice, something beyond the concern of an employer for a valued employee. Bethany felt her heartbeat quicken. Thank you, she said again, unable to find other words. They sat together until darkness fell completely, talking of small things, comfortable in each other's company. When Tyler finally rose to leave, he hesitated, then reached out to briefly touch her hand. Good night, Bethany. Good night, Tyler. She watched him walk back to the main house, his tall figure silhouetted against the lighted windows. Alina's warning echoed in her mind. Be careful with your heart. But she feared it might already be too late for caution. The following Saturday, Tyler announced he needed to go to town for supplies and asked if Bethany would like to accompany him. You mentioned needing some spices and fabric, he said, and it's a fine day for a drive. They set out in the wagon after breakfast, the autumn air crisp and invigorating. Tyler pointed out features of the landscape as they rode, telling stories of the area's history, the Comanche who had once dominated these plains, the Spanish explorers who had passed through, the first settlers who had carved out ranches from the wilderness. In town, their arrival caused the usual stir of whispers and stares. Bethany had grown somewhat accustomed to it, but today the atmosphere felt different, more charged. They stopped first at the general store. The proprietor, Mr. Jenkins, was civil but cool as he filled their order. While Tyler arranged for the heavier supplies to be loaded into the wagon, Bethany selected spices and fabric. As she waited at the counter, the bell over the door jingled, and 3 women entered, clearly the wives of prominent townsmen, dressed in their Saturday best. They stopped short at the sight of Bethany. Well, said the oldest, a gray-haired woman with sharp features, I see Kincaid's cook is doing his shopping now. Bethany nodded politely. Good morning, ladies. The women exchanged glances. You're quite bold coming into town like this, said the second woman. Most colored folks know to use the back entrance. Bethany felt her face grow warm but kept her expression neutral. Mr. Kincaid asked me to accompany him to select cooking supplies. Did he now? The third woman, younger and prettier than the others, looked past Bethany to where Tyler was visible through the window. How accommodating of him! The implication in her tone was unmistakable. Bethany felt a cold knot form in her stomach. I should finish my shopping, she said, turning back to the counter. You should finish and leave, the gray-haired woman said coldly. There's talk enough about Kincaid's unusual household arrangements without you flaunting yourself in town. Before Bethany could respond, Tyler appeared at her side. His face was pleasant, but his eyes were hard as he surveyed the women. Ladies, he said with a nod, I trust you're not making Miss Gardner feel unwelcome in a public establishment. Tyler Kincaid, the older woman said stiffly, you know perfectly well that your choices regarding staff are your business on your property. But in town, Miss Gardner is purchasing supplies at my request, Tyler interrupted, his voice deceptively calm. As my employee, she has every right to be here. As a human being, she has every right to be treated with courtesy. The youngest woman stepped forward, placing a hand on Tyler's arm. "We're only thinking of your reputation, Tyler. People talk." He removed her hand firmly but politely. "Let them. My reputation stands on the quality of my cattle and my word, not on who cooks my meals." The women withdrew, murmuring to each other. Tyler turned to Bethany. "Have you found everything you need?" She nodded, her throat tight with emotion, not from the women's cruelty, which was familiar, but from his defense, which was not. They completed their purchases in silence. As they left the store, Bethany noticed a group of men gathered outside the saloon across the street, watching them. Among them was Parker, the man who had confronted Tyler before. "Kincaid," he called out, loud enough for half the street to hear. "Bringing your darky to town again. Must be special services she's providing." Several of the men laughed. Bethany froze, mortification washing over her. Tyler's reaction was immediate. He handed the packages to Bethany, placed them in the wagon, and then strode across the street. The laughter died as he approached. "Parker," Tyler said, his voice dangerously quiet. "You owe Miss Gardner an apology." Parker sneered. "I don't owe nothing to." He never finished the sentence. Tyler's fist connected with his jaw, sending him sprawling into the dirt. The other men stepped back, suddenly finding great interest in their boots or the sky. Tyler stood over Parker, who was spitting blood. "Miss Gardner is my employee and under my protection. You will apologize, or we can continue this conversation." Parker looked up at him, then at the silent men around him who offered no support. Finally, he struggled to his feet. "Sorry, miss," he muttered, not looking at Bethany. Tyler nodded once, then turned and walked back to the wagon. His knuckles were bloody, but his face was composed as he helped Bethany up to the seat and climbed up beside her. They rode in silence until they were well out of town. Finally, Bethany spoke. "You shouldn't have done that." "He insulted you." "Yes, but fighting, some men only understand one language." Tyler flexed his injured hand. "I'm not proud of it, but I won't apologize for defending you. It will only make things worse. Now they'll be even more convinced that." She couldn't finish. Tyler reined the horses to a stop and turned to face her. "Convinced of what? That I care about you, that I won't stand by while you're mistreated." His eyes searched hers. "Is that so terrible? You know it's more than that they're implying." Bethany looked down at her hands. "They think I'm that we're." "I know what they think." His voice softened. "And I don't care what they think, I care what you think, what you feel." Her heart hammered in her chest. "What I feel doesn't matter, the world doesn't allow for what they're suggesting, not between people like us." "The world," Tyler said gently, "can go to hell." He reached out and took her hand. His palm was rough with calluses, warm against her skin. "Bethany, I've never met anyone like you. Your strength, your dignity, your kindness, despite everything you've faced." He paused. "I know it's complicated. I know there are obstacles. But I need you to know that I see you, all of you, and you're beautiful in every way." Tears sprang to her eyes. No one had ever called her beautiful before, not like this, not seeing past her skin to the person beneath. "Tyler, we can." His grip on her hand tightened. "Not easily, perhaps, but if you feel even a fraction of what I feel, then we can find a way." For a moment, she allowed herself to imagine it, a life with this man who saw her, respected her, defended her, who looked at her as if she were precious. But then reality intruded. Your ranch, your standing in the community, you would lose so much. What good is any of it without happiness? Without— He hesitated, then said it. "Without love." The word hung between them, fragile and powerful. Bethany felt something break open inside her, a door she had kept locked for self-preservation. "I need time," she whispered. "To think, to be sure." Tyler nodded, releasing her hand reluctantly. "Take all the time you need, I'm not going anywhere." He picked up the reins again. "And neither are you, I hope." "No," she said softly. "I'm not going anywhere." They drove the rest of the way in silence, but it was a different silence now, charged with possibility, with unspoken feelings that had finally found acknowledgement in the open air of the Texas plains. The following weeks brought a subtle change to the ranch. Nothing was said openly, but the way Tyler and Bethany moved around each other, careful, aware, their eyes meeting across rooms, spoke volumes. The ranch hands noticed, but kept their observations to themselves, respecting both their boss and the woman who had made their lives more comfortable with her cooking and care. December brought colder weather, and with it, preparations for Christmas. Tyler announced that, as was his custom, there would be a celebration at the ranch on Christmas Eve for all the hands and any family they wished to invite. "I'd like to make it special this year," he told Bethany as they planned the menu. "A proper feast." "Of course," she agreed. "I'll need to start preparations soon." "Whatever you need, just ask." He hesitated. "And I'd like you to join us, not as the cook but as my guest." The distinction was significant. "Tyler, please. It would mean a great deal to me," she nodded slowly. "All right." In the days leading up to Christmas, Bethany threw herself into preparations. She baked pies and cakes, prepared side dishes that could be finished on the day, and planned every detail of the feast. Tyler rode to town and returned with a wagon load of supplies, including a small package he didn't show her. On Christmas Eve, the ranch hands decorated the main house with pine boughs and candles. A large tree stood in the corner of the dining room, adorned with simple ornaments and strings of dried berries. The long table was extended to its full length and set with Tyler's best dishes. By late afternoon, everything was ready. Bethany returned to her cabin to change for the evening, putting on her best dress, a deep green wool with black trim that she had carefully preserved for special occasions. She pinned up her hair and even used a touch of the rose-scented perfume her mother had given her before she died. As she walked toward the main house in the gathering twilight, snow began to fall, a rare occurrence in that part of Texas, and one viewed as a good omen. The soft flakes dusted her shoulders and caught in her hair as she made her way up the path. Tyler met her at the door, dressed in his best black suit with a crisp white shirt. He stared at her for a long moment before finding his voice. "You look absolutely stunning." "Thank you," she smiled, suddenly shy under his intense gaze. "So do you." He offered his arm, and she took it, allowing him to escort her into the house where the ranch hands and a few visitors, mostly wives of the married hands, were already gathered. There was a momentary hush as they entered together, but then Daniel stepped forward. "Miss Gardner, you're a vision," he said warmly. "Merry Christmas." "Thank you, Daniel. Merry Christmas to you." The tension broken, others came forward to greet her. Tyler kept her hand on his arm, a clear statement that left no one in doubt about her status at this gathering. She was not there as the cook, but as someone special to him. Dinner was a festive affair, with conversation flowing easily and laughter filling the room. Tyler had procured a few bottles of good whiskey, which the men enjoyed in moderation, and there was even music when Carlos produced a guitar and began playing traditional Mexican Christmas songs. After dinner, Tyler called for everyone's attention. "Before we continue our celebration, I have a few small tokens of appreciation to distribute." He presented each ranch hand with an envelope containing a bonus, thanking them individually for their contribution to the ranch's success. There were also small gifts: new gloves, knives, books chosen with each man's interests in mind. When he had finished with the hands, Tyler turned to Bethany. "And for Miss Gardner, whose arrival has brought such improvement to our lives." He handed her a small package wrapped in silver paper. Aware of all eyes upon her, Bethany carefully unwrapped it. Inside was a small box, and within that, a pendant of silver rose on a delicate chain. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "May I?" Tyler asked, taking the necklace. She turned, allowing him to fasten it around her neck, his fingers brushing against her skin. When she turned back, their eyes met, and in that moment, it didn't matter who was watching. The world narrowed to just the two of them, connected by something stronger than the conventions that would keep them apart. Later, as the celebration continued, Tyler found her on the porch, where she had stepped out to enjoy the rare sight of snow falling on the Texas landscape. "Are you cold?" he asked, coming to stand beside her. "No." She touched the pendant at her throat. "Thank you for this. It's the most beautiful gift I've ever received. You deserve beautiful things." He moved closer. "Bethany, I've given you time. I've tried to be patient. But I need to know, have you thought about what I said?" "I've thought of little else," she admitted. "I'm just afraid of what? Of wanting something I can't have. Of allowing myself to dream and then having it shattered. Of hurting you by association with me." Tyler took her hands in his. "I'm not a naive man, Bethany. I understand the challenges, but I also understand what matters in this life." His voice dropped lower. "And what matters is how I feel when I'm with you, how everything is brighter, more meaningful. How I find myself thinking of ways to make you smile, just to see it happen." Snowflakes settled on his dark hair and broad shoulders as he spoke, and Bethany had never seen anything more beautiful than this man, opening his heart to her despite everything the world would throw at them. "I feel the same," she whispered. "God help me, but I do." The relief and joy that crossed his face was worth every doubt, every fear she had set aside to speak those words. He drew her closer, one hand moving to gently cup her face. "May I kiss you, Bethany Gardner?" She nodded, unable to speak past the emotion tightening her throat. His lips met hers, gentle at first, then with growing certainty. It was a kiss that promised protection, respect, and a devotion that would weather whatever storms came their way. When they finally parted, breathless and a little stunned by the power of what had passed between them, Tyler rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said simply. "I think I have since the moment I saw you standing alone on that hotel porch, looking like you could take on the whole world by yourself." She laughed softly, tears mingling with the snowflakes on her cheeks. "And I love you, Tyler Kincaid. God knows I tried not to, but my heart wouldn't listen." From inside came the sound of laughter and music, the world they would have to face eventually. But for now, in the quiet miracle of Christmas Eve snow, they held each other close, two souls who had found in each other something worth fighting for. The new year brought both joy and challenges. Tyler and Bethany's relationship could no longer be hidden or denied, especially after he began taking her on Sunday drives, accompanying her to town, and generally making it clear to anyone with eyes that his feelings went far beyond those of employer to employee. The reactions were predictably mixed. Daniel and most of the ranch hands accepted the situation with equanimity, some even with obvious approval. In town, however, the response was far less positive. Merchants who had always been cordial to Tyler became cool. Invitations to social events that had once been regular stopped arriving. On Sundays, when they attended church together, they found an empty pew on either side of them, as if their love were contagious. The hardest blow came in February, when Tyler's largest cattle buyer, a man he'd done business with for years, informed him that he would be taking his business elsewhere. "It's not personal, Kincaid," the man said, not meeting Tyler's eyes. "Just business." "The hell it isn't," Tyler replied evenly. "My cattle are the same quality they've always been. The only thing that's changed is who sits at my table." The man had no response to that, and Tyler didn't press for one. He returned to the ranch that evening somber but resolute. "We'll find other buyers," he told Bethany as they sat on the porch of the main house after dinner. "It may mean driving the herds further, maybe even all the way to Kansas, but we'll manage." Bethany felt the weight of guilt pressing on her. "Tyler, this is exactly what I feared. Your life, your business, everything is being affected because of me." He took her hand, a gesture that had become as natural as breathing. "No, it's being affected because small-minded people can't accept that I love a woman whose skin is different from mine." He squeezed her fingers. "Their problem, not ours. But if it continues, if you lose more business, if the ranch suffers, then we adapt. We find new markets, new opportunities." His expression softened as he looked at her. "Bethany, nothing, no amount of money or social standing is worth giving up what we have." "Do you understand that?" She did, but it didn't ease her worry. "I just don't want to be the reason for your unhappiness." "You could never be that," he smiled. "You're the reason I wake up eager to face each day. Everything else is just details." Despite his confidence, the pressure continued to mount through the spring. Anonymous notes were left at the ranch gate, warning Tyler to send the colored woman away or face consequences. Twice, cattle were found shot dead in the pastures closest to the road. And when Bethany went to town alone for supplies, the treatment she received grew increasingly hostile. It came to a head in April. Bethany had gone to town with Daniel to purchase seed for the kitchen garden. As they loaded their purchases into the wagon, a group of men approached Parker among them, but now accompanied by several others, including two of the men who had stopped doing business with the ranch. "Well, look what we have here," Parker called. "Kincaid's whore and his pet nigger." Daniel stiffened but kept loading the wagon. "Ignore them," he murmured to Bethany. "Let's just finish and go." But the men moved closer, blocking their path to the wagon seat. "We've been patient," one of the men said, "given Kincaid time to come to his senses, but our patience is wearing thin." "This doesn't concern you," Bethany said, straightening to her full height. "Please let us pass." "It concerns the whole town when a man like Kincaid starts getting ideas above his station," another man growled, "flaunting his colored woman like she's a real lady." Daniel stepped forward. "That's enough. Miss Gardner is a lady and you'll speak to her with respect," Parker laughed. "Or what, you'll tell your boss, have him ride in to defend her honor." He spat on the ground. "She hasn't got any honor to defend." What happened next was quick and violent. Daniel's fist connected with Parker's face, sending him stumbling back. The other men surged forward, and suddenly it was a full-fledged brawl in the middle of the street. Bethany tried to intervene, crying out for them to stop, but one of the men shoved her roughly. She fell against the wagon, striking her head on the corner of it. Pain exploded behind her eyes, and she collapsed to the ground through a haze. She was aware of shouts, of Daniel calling her name, of running footsteps and the sound of more blows. Then strong arms were lifting her, a familiar voice cursing steadily as she was placed gently in the back of the wagon. "Hang on, Bethany," Daniel's voice, tight with worry. "We're getting you home." The journey back to the ranch was a blur of pain and jostling. When they arrived, Daniel carried her directly to the main house, shouting for Tyler. She drifted in and out of consciousness as Tyler appeared, his face white with shock, then dark with fury as Daniel explained what had happened. There was talk of a doctor, of riding for help, but the town doctor was unlikely to come for her, and the nearest alternative was 30 miles away. "I know what to do," Elena's voice when Elena arrived. "I have helped with many head wounds. Bring clean cloths, hot water, my bag from the wagon." Bethany was aware of being moved to Tyler's bedroom, of gentle hands cleaning the wound on her temple, of a bitter-tasting tea being held to her lips. Through it all, Tyler's voice, sometimes speaking to others, sometimes murmuring to her alone promises, endearments, reassurances. "Stay with me, love, stay with me." Night fell. Alina declared the wound serious but not life-threatening as long as fever didn't set in. She would need rest, quiet, and careful watching. "I'll stay with her," Tyler said, his voice allowing no argument. "Of course you will," Alina replied. "Call me if her condition changes. I'll sleep in the spare room." When they were alone, Tyler sat beside the bed, holding Bethany's hand as if it were the most precious thing in the world. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice weak. "For what?" His thumb traced gentle circles on her palm. "For causing trouble. For making things difficult for you and the ranch." Tyler's expression hardened. "You have nothing to apologize for, nothing. It's those bastards in town who'll be sorry when I'm through with them." "No violence," she pleaded. "Please, Tyler, it only makes things worse." He was silent for a long moment. "They hurt you, Bethany. I can't let that stand. And what will more violence solve? More hatred, more division? It will teach them that there are consequences, for the only consequence will be more pain." She squeezed his hand weakly. "Promise me you won't seek revenge." He looked at her, his blue eyes tormented. "I can promise I won't go looking for a fight," he said finally, "but I will protect what's mine. That includes you, this ranch, my people." It was as much as she could hope for. Exhaustion pulled at her, making her eyelids heavy. "Rest," Tyler said, seeing her fatigue. "I'll be right here when you wake." She slept fitfully, waking occasionally to find Tyler still beside her, sometimes reading by lamplight, sometimes just watching over her. By morning, the worst of the pain had subsided, leaving a dull throb and a marked tenderness at her temple. Alina examined the wound, pronouncing it healing well but insisting Bethany remain in bed for at least another day. Tyler left only to attend to the most pressing ranch business, returning as quickly as possible to sit with her in the quiet of the sick room. They talked of many things of their childhoods, of books they had read, of dreams for the future. Tyler spoke of his time in the war, of the horrors he had witnessed, and the promises he had made to himself about the kind of man he would be if he survived. "I saw men die for the idea that all people are created equal," he told her. Black men fighting alongside white men, bleeding the same blood, showing the same courage. After that, how could I ever accept the notion that some lives matter less than others because of the color of their skin? "And yet most who fought came home and accepted things exactly as they were before," Bethany observed. "It's easier," Tyler admitted, "to go along, to not make waves, but I can't live that way. Not and still respect the man in my mirror." By the third day, Bethany was well enough to move back to her cabin, though Tyler protested. "You should stay in the house until you're fully recovered. People are talking enough already," she pointed out gently. "I need to maintain some propriety." He frowned but didn't argue. Instead, he walked her to her cabin, his arm around her waist supporting her still unsteady steps. At her door, he paused. "Bethany, I've been thinking." "That sounds dangerous," she teased. He smiled, but his eyes remained serious. "What happened in town? It made me realize how fragile life is. How quickly things can change." He took her hands in his. "I don't want to waste any more time worrying about what others think or say. I want to build a life with you, a real life, recognized by law and God." Her breath caught. "Tyler, what are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to marry you, Bethany Gardner, if you'll have me." Of all the ways she had imagined this moment, and she had imagined it, in the quiet of her nights alone, she had never pictured herself standing at her cabin door with a bandaged head and Tyler looking at her as if she might break if he spoke too loudly. "You know it won't be easy," she said softly. "In many states, it's not even legal. I've looked into it. New Mexico territory has no laws against interracial marriage. We could go there, be married legally, and return here as husband and wife." His eyes searched hers. "It won't change how some people see us, but it will give us legal protections, rights. It will make you my wife in the eyes of the law, not just in my heart." The practicality of his planning, the thoroughness of his consideration, touched her deeply. This wasn't an impulsive proposal born of her injury, but something he had researched, considered from all angles. "Tyler Kincaid," she said, her voice steady despite the tears threatening. "I would be honored to be your wife." The joy that transformed his face was like sunrise breaking over the plains. He gathered her carefully into his arms, mindful of her injury, and kissed her with a tenderness that spoke volumes of his love and respect. "We'll leave as soon as you're well enough to travel," he said when they parted. "2 weeks, perhaps. I'll make all the arrangements." Word of their engagement spread quickly through the ranch. The hands offered congratulations with varying degrees of enthusiasm but uniform respect. Daniel, in particular, seemed genuinely pleased. "About time," he told Tyler with a grin. "I was beginning to think you'd never get around to asking her." In town, the reaction was predictably different. The news was met with shock, then outrage. Several more business associates severed ties with the ranch. The local minister, when approached about performing the ceremony, refused outright and suggested Tyler seek guidance about his unnatural desires. But Tyler remained undeterred. He made arrangements for a justice of the peace in Santa Fe to perform the ceremony and reserved rooms at the best hotel. They would make a proper wedding trip of it, he decided, staying a week before returning to the ranch. 2 days before their planned departure, Tyler rode into town to finalize some business matters before their absence. Bethany spent the day packing and preparing for the journey, her heart lighter than it had been in years, despite the lingering soreness from her injury. As evening approached with no sign of Tyler's return, she began to worry. It wasn't like him to be so late without sending word. Her concern grew to alarm when Daniel appeared at her door, his expression grave. "Miss Bethany, there's been trouble in town." Her heart seemed to stop. "Tyler." "He's alive," Daniel said quickly. "But hurt. They're bringing him now." She followed Daniel to the main house where they waited on the porch. Soon, a wagon appeared on the horizon, moving slowly. As it drew closer, she could make out several of the ranch hands accompanying it, their faces grim. Tyler lay in the back, unconscious, his face bruised and bloodied. His right arm was splinted, clearly broken, and his breathing was labored, suggesting damaged ribs. "What happened?" she demanded as the men carefully carried him into the house. Jim, the oldest of the hands, answered. "Ambush." 6 or 7 men caught him coming out of the bank. Parker was there and Simmons from the hotel. They said they were teaching him a lesson about forgetting his place. The man's disgust was evident. "Sheriff did nothing. Said Tyler probably provoked them somehow." Bethany felt a cold rage unlike anything she had ever experienced. But there was no time for anger now. Tyler needed care. They settled him in his bedroom, the same room where he had nursed her just days before. The local doctor had been summoned but had sent word he was too busy to attend. Alina, thankfully, had remained at the ranch after helping Bethany and now took charge, examining Tyler's injuries with practiced hands. "The arm is broken but set properly," she announced. "Ribs cracked, not broken through, I think. The cuts and bruises are superficial. The blow to the head is my concern." For 2 days, Tyler remained unconscious, his breathing shallow. Bethany never left his side, bathing his face with cool cloths, spooning broth between his lips when he stirred, speaking to him constantly even when there was no indication he could hear. On the third day, as dawn broke, his eyes finally opened. For a moment he seemed disoriented, then his gaze focused on Bethany's face. "There you are," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "I was looking for you." Relief flooded through her. "I'm here. I've been here all along." He tried to move and winced. "How bad?" "Broken arm, cracked ribs, a hard knock to the head, and enough bruises to make you colorful for weeks," she told him, trying to keep her voice light despite the tears threatening. "But you'll heal." Memory returned to his eyes. "Parker, Simmons." They said. He stopped, apparently unwilling to repeat what had been said. "I know." She stroked his cheek gently, avoiding the worst of the bruising. "It doesn't matter what they said. All that matters is that you're going to be all right." "The wedding," he said suddenly. "We were supposed to leave. It can wait until you're stronger." "No." Despite his injuries, his voice was firm. "No more waiting. As soon as I can travel, we go. I won't let them stop us, Bethany. I won't let fear win." Over the next 2 weeks, Tyler regained his strength with remarkable speed. The broken arm would take longer to heal, but by the end of May, he was able to move around the ranch and even ride short distances. "I think we can travel now," he told Bethany as they sat on the porch one evening. "Not the long ride to Santa Fe, my ribs aren't ready for that, but perhaps a shorter journey." "To where?" she asked, confused. "We need to go to New Mexico to be married legally." "Not necessarily," he smiled, a hint of his old mischief returning. "I've been corresponding with a judge in Indian Territory. The Cherokee Nation has no laws against interracial marriage. It's a 3-day journey by wagon, easier than the week to Santa Fe." Bethany considered this. "And this judge is willing to perform the ceremony." "More than willing. He's married to a Cherokee woman himself, understands our situation perfectly." Tyler took her hand. "What do you say? Are you ready to become Mrs. Kincaid?" The answer required no thought. "Yes, as soon as you're strong enough for the journey." They set out a week later, traveling with Daniel and 2 other hands as escorts. The journey was slow but uneventful, and they arrived in Tahlequah, the capital of the Cherokee Nation, on a sunny June morning. Judge William Thompson met them at his office, a dignified man in his 60s with kind eyes and a firm handshake. "Mr. Kincaid, Miss Gardner, welcome. My wife and I are honored to host your ceremony." They were invited to stay at the judge's comfortable home, where his wife, a handsome Cherokee woman named Sarah, welcomed them warmly. "It does my heart good to see love triumph over foolish prejudice," she told Bethany as she showed her to a guest room. "My William and I have been married 30 years now, and I've never regretted a day of it, despite what some might say." The ceremony took place the following afternoon in the judge's garden. Sarah had helped Bethany prepare, lending her a beautiful white lace shawl to wear over her best dress. "Something borrowed," she explained with a smile. "For luck." Daniel stood as witness for Tyler, while Sarah stood for Bethany. The judge's words were simple but profound, speaking of the courage it took to follow one's heart against convention and the strength found in union. When Tyler slipped a gold band onto Bethany's finger, a band he had somehow managed to procure despite his injuries, and their rushed departure, she felt a sense of completion, of rightness that transcended all the doubts and fears that had plagued her. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Judge Thompson declared. "What God has joined together, let no man put asunder." Tyler's kiss was gentle, mindful of his still healing ribs but filled with promise. They were married truly, legally married. Whatever came next, they would face it together. They spent 3 days with the Thompsons, whose hospitality and acceptance were balm to spirits battered by months of prejudice and violence. But ranch responsibilities called, and soon it was time to return to Texas. "You are always welcome here," Sarah told them as they prepared to leave. should you ever need refuge or simply friendly faces. The journey home was as uneventful as the journey out, but Bethany found herself growing tense as they approached Tascosa and the ranch beyond. What awaited them there? Would their marriage change anything, or simply harden the opposition they already faced? Tyler seemed to sense her anxiety. "Whatever happens," he said, taking her hand as they rode side by side in the wagon, "we face it together now, as husband and wife." She squeezed his fingers. "Together." They arrived at the ranch to find everything in order. The hands had managed well in their absence, and the cattle were thriving in the summer pastures. Daniel had ridden ahead to inform everyone of their return, and they were met with congratulations, and a special dinner prepared by the hands, a touching if somewhat haphazard attempt at a wedding feast. That night, as Bethany moved her belongings from her cabin to the main house, she felt a sense of rightness, of coming home in the deepest sense. This was where she belonged, not because it was perfect or easy, but because it was where love had found her, unexpected and transformative. The following months brought both challenges and joys. News of their marriage spread quickly, and the backlash was predictable. More business contacts severed ties, and when they attended church together as husband and wife for the first time, half the congregation walked out in protest. But there were unexpected allies as well. A young banker new to town approached Tyler about financing the next cattle drive, untroubled by the social implications of doing business with a man married to a woman of color. A group of Mexican ranchers from south of the border, hearing of the situation, offered to buy Tyler's cattle at fair market prices. And slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, some attitudes in town began to shift. Not dramatically, not universally, but enough to notice. The general store owner, who had been cool but correct in his dealings with Bethany before, now occasionally asked after her health or commented on the weather. A few women who had previously crossed the street to avoid her now nodded in passing. "It's the power of persistence," Tyler observed. "We're showing them, day by day, that their world doesn't end because we love each other." The true test came in October, when Bethany discovered she was expecting a child. The news filled her with both joy and trepidation. A child would cement their union in the most visible way possible, making their defiance of convention impossible to ignore. Tyler's reaction was pure joy. He lifted her in a careful embrace, his arm now healed but still treated with caution. "A baby," he whispered, awe in his voice. "Our baby." "Are you truly happy about this?" she asked, needing to be certain. "It will make everything more complicated." "Complicated," he laughed. "Bethany, nothing has ever been simple for us. But this, a child created from our love. This is the most natural, most right thing in the world." As her pregnancy progressed, Bethany found herself the recipient of unexpected kindnesses. Alina, who had become a regular visitor to the ranch, brought herbal teas to ease morning sickness and began knitting tiny garments. Daniel's wife, Martha, who lived in a small town 20 miles away and visited occasionally, offered advice from her experience raising 4 children. Most surprisingly, the new banker's wife, a young woman named Emily who had been raised in Boston, called at the ranch one day with a basket of baby items. "I hope you don't mind," she said, slightly nervous but determined. "When I heard your news, I wanted to bring these." Every new mother should be celebrated. It was a small gesture, perhaps, but a meaningful one, the first social call from a white woman in town who wasn't employed by or related to someone at the ranch. Spring arrived, bringing with it new life across the ranch. Calves were born, wildflowers bloomed, and on a warm May morning, Bethany's labor began. Tyler paced the porch as Alina, Martha, and surprisingly, Emily attended Bethany inside. After hours of waiting, during which he wore a path in the porch boards and smoked more cigars than he had in the previous year combined, a cry pierced the air, the unmistakable first wail of a newborn. Minutes that felt like hours passed before the bedroom door opened and Emily appeared, her face flushed but smiling. "Mr. Kincaid, you have a son, a beautiful, healthy son, and your wife is doing wonderfully." Tyler nearly knocked her over in his haste to enter the bedroom. There, propped up on pillows, looking exhausted but radiant, sat Bethany with a small bundle in her arms. She looked up as he entered, her smile brighter than the sun outside. "Come meet your son," she said softly. He approached almost reverently, sitting carefully on the edge of the bed. The baby had skin a shade lighter than Bethany's but darker than his own, with a surprising amount of black hair and features that somehow already showed traces of them both. "He's perfect," Tyler whispered, reaching out to touch one tiny hand. The baby reflexively gripped his finger and he felt his heart expand in his chest. "Absolutely perfect. We need to name him," Bethany said. "I thought perhaps, James, after your father." Tyler looked at her in surprise. "You would do that, of course. He should know his heritage, all of it. His grandfather was a good man who fought for what he believed in. That's a legacy worth honoring." "James," Tyler repeated, testing the name. "James Daniel Kincaid." Bethany smiled. "Daniel will be honored, he should be. He stood by us through everything." Tyler leaned down to kiss her gently. "Thank you for our son, for being my wife, for everything." As baby James grew, so did the changes around them. The ranch prospered despite the initial boycott. As new markets opened, and old prejudices slowly, very slowly began to erode in the face of the family's quiet dignity, and Tyler's undeniable success as a cattleman. By James's first birthday, a celebration attended by ranch hands and a small but significant number of townspeople, the worst of the hostility had faded to a dull murmur rather than an open shout. Parker had left town after losing his job for drunkenness. Simmons had been forced to sell the hotel after mismanagement led to financial troubles. The new owner, a widow from Chicago, had actually called on Bethany to inquire about hiring her to consult on improving the hotel's kitchen. "It's not acceptance exactly," Bethany observed to Tyler as they watched their son take tentative steps across the porch. "But it's tolerance, a recognition that we're here to stay." "It's a beginning," Tyler agreed. "And for James and any brothers or sisters that might come along, it's the foundation of something better." The mention of siblings made Bethany smile. "About that." Tyler looked at her, understanding dawning in his eyes. "Really? Already?" she nodded, placing a hand on her still flat abdomen. "The doctor confirmed it yesterday. Late November, he thinks." Tyler gathered her into his arms, being careful not to crush their son, who had toddled back to clutch at his mother's skirts. "I love you," he said fiercely. "Both of you, all three of you." "And I love you," she replied, standing tall and proud in the circle of his embrace. "For seeing me, truly seeing me when no one else would. For believing I was beautiful in every way." In November, they welcomed a daughter, Elizabeth Elena Kincaid, named for both their mothers. Like her brother, she was a perfect blend of her parents, with Tyler's blue eyes set in a face that echoed Bethany's delicate features. As the family grew, so did the ranch. Tyler added land, expanded the herds, and built a reputation for fair dealing that eventually overcame most of the social prejudice. They were never fully accepted in certain circles, but they created their own community of like-minded friends and loyal workers who valued character over convention. James and Elizabeth grew strong and confident, raised to be proud of their dual heritage and to stand tall against ignorance. 2 more children joined the family over the years, another son, Thomas, and a second daughter, Rose. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Tyler presented Bethany with a special gift, the deed to a piece of land on the ranch where he had built a small schoolhouse. "For our children, and the children of our workers," he explained, "and for you to teach in if you wish. I know how much you love books and learning." Bethany, who had often spoken of her regret at having her own education cut short by necessity, was overwhelmed. "Tyler, this is everything." "Not everything," he corrected gently. "You are everything, you and our family. This is just a building." "No," she said, looking out at the neat white structure surrounded by newly planted trees. "It's the future, a future I never dared dream of until I met you." That evening, as they sat on the porch of the home, they had built together both the physical structure and the family that filled it with life. Bethany reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From a friendless young woman stepping off a stagecoach with nothing but hope and determination, to a wife, mother, and respected member of a community that had once rejected her. "What are you thinking about?" Tyler asked, his hand finding hers in the gathering darkness. "About fate," she answered truthfully. "About how the worst day of my life, being rejected for that hotel job, led me to the best life I could have imagined. I've always believed some things are meant to be," Tyler said, squeezing her fingers. "Some connections are too powerful to be denied, no matter what stands in their way." From inside the house came the sound of children's laughter, James teaching his younger siblings a game he had invented. The future, bright with possibility, growing from the love of 2 people who had dared to see beyond the boundaries others had tried to place around them. "You know," Tyler said, a smile in his voice, "I never did thank Simmons for refusing to hire you that day." Bethany laughed. "I'm not sure he would appreciate the sentiment. Probably not, but I'm grateful nonetheless." He turned to face her, his eyes reflecting the first stars appearing in the sky. "Every day I'm grateful for you, Bethany Kincaid." "And I for you," she replied, leaning into his embrace. "Every single day." As darkness settled fully over the Texas plains, they remained together on the porch, their love a beacon that had guided them through storms of prejudice and hardship to this place of peace. Not a perfect world, but a world they had helped to change, one heart at a time, beginning with their own.